I am Julia, 35 years old, and working as an interior designer in Boston. My life was picture perfect, with a beautiful home and a 12-year marriage to Daniel that everyone envied. At least that's what I thought until I started noticing strange text messages and unexplained absences. That gut feeling we all get when something isn't right. Mine was screaming at me. What I discovered next would change everything, especially when I found out who his affair partner really was. Before I tell you my story, let me know where you're watching from and hit subscribe to hear more stories like mine. My story with Daniel began in college. I was studying interior design, and he was the charming business major with big plans for his future. We met at a mutual friend's party during our junior year. Daniel walked in with this confident smile, and within minutes of conversation, I was captivated. He had this way of making me feel like I was the only person in the room worth talking to. Our romance was a whirlwind. After 6 months of dating, we were inseparable. By senior year, we were planning our future together. Daniel proposed on graduation day, getting down on one knee in front of our families and friends after we received our diplomas. I still remember the sun hitting his face just right as he looked up at me with those sincere brown eyes promising me forever. We married a year later on a perfect summer day in Cape Cod. The ceremony was everything I had dreamed of since I was a little girl. White roses everywhere, the sound of waves in the background, and Daniel waiting for me at the altar with tears in his eyes. Our vows were heartfelt promises of love, fidelity, and support through whatever life would throw at us. The irony of those vows wouldn't hit me until years later. After the honeymoon, we settled into married life with ease. Daniel joined a prestigious financial firm and began climbing the corporate ladder immediately. I started my own interior design business, which grew steadily as Daniel's connections referred their wives and colleagues to me. Within 5 years, we had saved enough to buy our dream home in an upscale Boston suburb. The house was a gorgeous colonial with a spacious yard and room for the family we planned to have. I spent months perfecting every detail, from the crown molding to the custom kitchen cabinets. It was featured in a local design magazine, which brought me even more clients. Daniel would proudly show the article to anyone who visited, telling them how talented his wife was. As our careers flourished, so did our social circle. We befriended other successful couples in our neighborhood, but none became as close to us as Thomas and Amanda Wilson. Thomas was a surgeon at Massachusetts General Hospital, and Amanda ran a successful event planning business. They lived 3 houses down from us, and it wasn't long before our weekly dinners became a tradition. Summer barbecues at our house were legendary. Daniel at the grill, me ensuring everything looked perfect, and our friends lounging by the pool with expensive wine flowing freely. Thomas and Amanda were always the last to leave, helping us clean up while we finished the last bottle and talked about everything and nothing until the early hours of the morning. Amanda and I would often shop together or grab lunch when our schedules aligned. She was the sister I never had, or so I thought. As we approached our 6th year of marriage, I began hinting at starting a family. Daniel always had a reason to postpone. First, he wanted to reach a certain position at work. Then, he wanted us to be more financially secure, despite both of us earning more than enough. Next, he thought we should travel more before being tied down with children. I went along with each excuse, believing we had all the time in the world. For our 10-year anniversary, Daniel surprised me with a 2-week trip to Italy. We explored Venice, Florence, and Rome, staying in luxurious hotels and enjoying the romance of it all. On our last night in Rome, over dinner at a rooftop restaurant overlooking the city, Daniel reached across the table and took my hand. "These past 10 years have been the best of my life," he said. "I fall more in love with you every day." I believed him. That night in our hotel room, it felt like we had recaptured the passion of our early relationship. I returned home feeling like we had entered a new chapter of our marriage, one even stronger than before. The shift was subtle at first. Little things changed after we returned from Italy. Daniel seemed more engaged in our relationship. He brought me flowers randomly and suggested date nights. I thought our trip had truly reignited something special. To show my support for his growing career responsibilities, I decided to surprise him by redecorating his home office. I spent weeks secretly planning ordering custom furniture and scheduling the installation for a weekend. When he was supposedly at a conference in New York, I wanted to create a space that reflected his success while providing comfort for those long hours he spent working from home. The dark wood desk, the leather chair, the built-in bookshelves filled with business books and family photos. Everything was chosen with him in mind. When he returned and saw the office, his reaction was everything I had hoped for. He hugged me tightly, telling me how much he appreciated the gesture and how much he loved me. That night, as we lay in bed, I felt secure in our relationship. The storm that was brewing just beneath the surface remained invisible to me, at least for a little while longer. The first sign something was wrong came about 3 months after our anniversary trip. Daniel started working late more frequently. At first, it was once a week, then twice, then almost every day. He would come home after I was already in bed, smelling of cologne that seemed fresher than it should have been after a long day at the office. "The Henderson account is taking up all my time," he would explain when I questioned him. "The client is demanding, but landing this will mean a huge bonus for us." I believed him because I wanted to, because in 12 years he had never given me a reason not to, but then came the unexplained absences. Times when he said he was at work, but his assistant would call the house looking for him. Times when he said he was having drinks with clients, but would return without the usual buzz from social drinking. His phone became an extension of his hand. He would take calls in another room, his voice hushed. If I entered, the conversation would abruptly change or end. When his phone pinged with messages, he would snatch it up immediately, angling the screen away from me. "Client confidentiality," he would say with a forced smile if I raised an eyebrow. One evening, I asked if he wanted to go out for dinner since he had been working so hard. "I can't tonight. I have a conference call with Hong Kong at 9, he said, not meeting my eyes. "I thought the Henderson account was based in Chicago," I asked, remembering his previous explanations. "It is. This is for something else, a potential new client." The explanation came too quickly, too rehearsed. The next morning, I checked his calendar while he was in the shower. There was no call with Hong Kong scheduled, no mention of a new client, just an empty evening block with no details. The knot in my stomach tightened. A week later, I was doing laundry when I found a receipt in his jacket pocket from Le Ciel, one of the most expensive restaurants in Boston. The date was from a night he told me he had grabbed a quick sandwich at his desk. The receipt showed dinner for 2, including a $200 bottle of champagne. My hands trembled as I stared at the paper, the evidence of his lie burning into my mind. I told myself there could be an explanation, a client dinner he forgot to mention, a celebration with a colleague for landing a deal. But deep down, I knew, the same way you know when it's going to rain before the first drop falls. There's just something in the air. The emotional distance grew wider each day. Daniel, who used to tell me everything about his day, now gave vague one-word answers to my questions. Physical intimacy became rare, always initiated by me, and often met with excuses of exhaustion or stress. The man who once couldn't keep his hands off me now barely kissed me goodbye in the mornings. Then came my father's 65th birthday celebration. We had planned it for months, a surprise party, with family flying in from across the country. Daniel had promised to be there, had even helped with some of the arrangements. But 3 hours before the party, he called. "Julia, I'm so sorry. The Henderson client is having a crisis. I have to go into the office right now." Today, now Dad's party starts in 3 hours. "Everyone will be there." My voice cracked with disappointment. I know and I feel terrible, but this could make or break the account. Tell your dad I'm sorry and I'll make it up to him. I hosted the party alone, making excuses for my absent husband, while my father tried to hide his disappointment. The photos from that day show me with a strained smile standing next to my father, with an empty space where Daniel should have been. After the party, I broke down in my car, not just because Daniel had missed an important family event, but because I knew in my heart he wasn't at the office. The Henderson account was becoming his universal excuse, and I was becoming too afraid to challenge it. When I got home that night, Daniel was already there, claiming the crisis had been resolved quicker than expected. Too late for the party, of course. He apologized profusely, hugging me and promising to take my father out for a special dinner to make up for it. I wanted to believe him. I tried to reconnect, suggesting weekend getaways or even just movie nights at home. Each attempt was met with enthusiasm that quickly faded into cancellations or distraction. Daniel would agree to a date night, then spend the entire evening checking his phone. He would promise a weekend away, then suddenly remember an unmovable work commitment. My best friend Natalie noticed the change in me. Over coffee one morning, she asked what was wrong. "I think something's going on with Daniel," I admitted the first time I had spoken my fears aloud. Like, what work stress? Maybe. Or maybe someone else. The words felt like acid on my tongue. Natalie reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Honey, are you sure you're not overreacting? Daniel adores you. Everyone sees it." "They used to," I said quietly. "I'm not so sure anymore." "Have you talked to him about how you're feeling?" I nodded. "He says I'm imagining things, that he's just busy with work, that I'm being paranoid." "Maybe he's telling the truth," she suggested gently. 12 years is a long time to throw away on an affair. I wanted to believe her. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe the distance was just a phase all long marriages go through. Maybe, but then came the phone call. I was home alone one Saturday when Daniel's phone rang on the kitchen counter while he was in the shower. Without thinking, I glanced at the screen. The name displayed was simply AW. The call ended before I could decide whether to answer, but a text message followed immediately. "Call me when you can talk privately. Miss you already." My heart stopped. I put the phone down exactly as I had found it and walked away, my mind racing. Those 4 words, "miss you already," replayed in my head like a broken record. They weren't the words of a business associate. They weren't the words of a friend. By the time Daniel came downstairs, I had composed myself enough to pretend everything was normal. But inside, the foundation of my marriage had begun to crumble. The question haunted me day and night. Should I investigate further or trust my husband? For days after seeing that text message from AW, I went back and forth. Was checking Daniel's phone or following him, stooping too low? Was I violating his privacy? But then again, wasn't he violating our marriage vows? If he was cheating, I decided to pay closer attention without actively snooping. I would observe patterns, note discrepancies, but not yet confront or accuse. I needed to be certain before blowing up my marriage of 12 years. A few days later, I got my next clue. Daniel was in the kitchen making coffee when a notification popped up on his phone screen. I wasn't trying to look, but the phone was facing up on the counter between us, and my eyes automatically caught the preview AW. "Can't wait to see you later. Same place." Daniel snatched up the phone, but not before I saw the message. My heart pounded as I pretended to be focused on my breakfast, but my appetite had vanished. "Important client?" I asked casually. "Just work stuff," he replied, pocketing the phone quickly. Who was AW? The initials rolled around in my head constantly. I mentally went through our acquaintances and Daniel's colleagues, but no one with those initials came to mind. I even checked his contact list one day when he was in the shower, but there was no AW listed. He must have saved the number under a different name or deleted the contact entirely. The internal battle raged inside me. One part of me wanted to respect Daniel's privacy and trust that there was an innocent explanation. Another part screamed that I was being naive, that I needed to protect myself by uncovering the truth. The weight of uncertainty was becoming unbearable. The discovery of the second phone changed everything. I was putting away Daniel's clean gym clothes when I accidentally knocked his bag off the hook in our closet. As I picked up the scattered contents, my hand closed around something hard in the side pocket. A black smartphone I had never seen before. It was locked, and I had no way to access it, but its very existence was damning. Why would my husband need a second secret phone? I put everything back exactly as I had found it, my hands shaking. That night, I barely slept lying next to the man I had shared my life with for over a decade, feeling like he was a stranger. The next day, when Daniel said he would be working late again, I made a decision I never thought I would make. I followed him. I felt ridiculous and ashamed as I trailed his car at a distance through Boston traffic, but I needed to know. I needed to see with my own eyes. He drove to the Four Seasons Hotel in downtown Boston, not his office, not a client's location, a luxury hotel. I watched from across the street as he entered, casual but purposeful, like someone who had been there many times before. I waited in my car for nearly an hour, hoping to see who he was meeting, but the entrance was busy with guests coming and going. Eventually, I lost sight of him and gave up for the day, my suspicions stronger, but still without concrete proof. I called Natalie that night, tears streaming down my face, as I told her what I had discovered so far. "The second phone is pretty damning, Jules," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "And the hotel visit. I don't want to jump to conclusions, but it doesn't look good. What should I do?" I asked, feeling more lost than I ever had. "If you want real answers, you need real evidence. Check credit card statements, phone records, anything that would show patterns, or—" She hesitated. "Or what? Or consider hiring a private investigator. They can do things legally that you shouldn't risk doing yourself." The suggestion shocked me initially. A private investigator seemed so dramatic, so final. But after another week of lies and late nights, after finding hotel charges on our joint credit card statement that Daniel claimed were for client meetings, I knew Natalie was right. I needed professional help to uncover the truth. I spent hours researching private investigators online, reading reviews and checking credentials. I finally selected one named Michael, a former police detective with excellent references. We met in a coffee shop far from my neighborhood. "I need to know if my husband is having an affair," I said plainly after we sat down. The words still felt surreal coming out of my mouth. Michael nodded without judgment. "I'll need some basic information. His schedule routines, the suspected meeting locations, and any information you have on who the other person might be." I provided Daniel's work address, his gym schedule, the Four Seasons, where I had followed him, and mentioned the mysterious AW. I also showed him the credit card statements with hotel charges. "The pattern suggests regular meetings," Michael observed. "Usually twice a week, always between 6 p.m. and 9 p.m. That's when he tells me he's working late," I confirmed, my voice hollow. For the next 2 weeks, Michael tracked Daniel's movements. I lived in a state of constant anxiety, jumping whenever my phone rang, half dreading, half hoping for news. Meanwhile, I maintained a facade of normalcy at home, making dinner, asking about Daniel's day, and pretending I wasn't dying inside. The emotional toll was immense. I lost weight. I couldn't sleep. I found myself staring at photos of Daniel and me during happier times, wondering where we had gone wrong. Had I been too focused on my career? Had I missed signs earlier? Was I somehow to blame? I kept my investigation secret from everyone except Natalie. I couldn't bear the pity or judgment from others, not when I was still processing my own feelings. Each day was a struggle to get through, to smile when clients came by to make small talk with neighbors to not break down in public. When Michael finally called for a meeting, I knew before he said anything. His expression told me everything I needed to know. "I have confirmation," he said, sliding a manila envelope across the table. With trembling hands, I opened it. Inside were photos of Daniel entering the Four Seasons, followed by a woman about 20 minutes later. They showed Daniel and the woman sitting close in the hotel bar, his hand on her thigh, leaning in to kiss her. The woman's face wasn't clearly visible in most shots, just the back of her head, or a profile partially obscured by Daniel's face. But in one photo, as they walked toward the elevators, she had turned slightly. Though the image was somewhat grainy and taken from a distance, there was something hauntingly familiar about her. The distinctive handbag she carried, a designer piece I had admired, the delicate gold bracelet on her wrist, the way she carried herself. "Do you recognize her?" Michael asked, watching my reaction. I stared at the photo pieces falling into place in my mind. The handbag, the bracelet, the initials AW. Amanda Wilson. I whispered the name, burning my throat like acid. My friend, my neighbor, Thomas's wife. The betrayal was double-edged, cutting twice as deep. Not just my husband, but one of my closest friends. A woman who had sat in my home countless times, who had hugged me, who had listened to me talk about my marriage. All while she was sleeping with my husband. Memories flooded back, recontextualized by this new knowledge. Amanda's eager questions about when Daniel would be working late, the knowing looks they sometimes exchanged at dinner parties, the way Amanda had commented on my anniversary trip to Italy, saying she wished Thomas would be so romantic. Had she been jealous, or just keeping tabs on her lover's whereabouts? Michael provided additional evidence. Cell phone records showing frequent calls between Daniel and a number I now knew was Amanda's secondary phone. Credit card statements with matching hotel charges on the same dates. A timeline of their affair stretching back at least 6 months, possibly longer. I thanked Michael, paid him his fee, and sat in my car for hours afterward, unable to drive, unable to think clearly. The world I thought I knew had shattered around me. That night, when Daniel came home late again, with the same tired excuse about work, I almost confronted him. The words were on the tip of my tongue, the photos burning a hole in my purse. But something stopped me, a voice in my head telling me to be strategic, to think before I acted. I needed time to process, to plan, to protect myself. Instead, I asked casually, "How's the Henderson account going?" "Good," he replied, loosening his tie. "We're making progress." "And Amanda and Thomas? We haven't seen them for dinner in a while. Should we invite them over this weekend?" I watched his face carefully. A flicker of something passed through his eyes. Alarm guilt. It was gone so quickly, I might have imagined it. Sure, if you want to," he said, suddenly very interested in checking his regular phone. "I'll text Amanda tomorrow," I said with a smile that felt like it might crack my face. That night, lying next to the man who had betrayed me in the worst possible way, I made a decision. I wouldn't just confront Daniel. I wouldn't just file for divorce. I would make sure both he and Amanda faced the consequences of their actions. Thomas deserved to know the truth as much as I did, and I would be the one to tell him. The next morning, I called the divorce attorney, whose card had been sitting in my wallet for weeks. I had picked it up from a community board at my gym, but hadn't had the courage to call until now. The evidence from the private investigator had erased any lingering doubts. "I'd like to schedule a consultation," I told the receptionist, my voice steadier than I expected. "I need to understand my options regarding divorce due to infidelity." 2 days later, I sat across from Elaine Schultz, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s, with a reputation for being fair but formidable. "Massachusetts is a no-fault divorce state," she explained after hearing my situation. "However, infidelity can sometimes impact financial settlements, especially if your husband used marital funds to finance the affair." I showed her the credit card statements with the hotel charges, the receipts for expensive dinners and gifts that had obviously not been for me. "Good," she nodded approvingly. "You've done your homework." Now we need to secure your assets before he realizes you know. Over the next week, I followed Elaine's advice meticulously. I created separate bank accounts and transferred my individual earnings into them. I made copies of all our financial records, tax returns, investment portfolios, and property deeds. I documented everything of value in our home with photographs and appraisals. I updated my will, removing Daniel as the beneficiary, all while pretending nothing was wrong. I made dinner, asked about his day, even initiated sex occasionally to avoid suspicion. Each smile felt like a betrayal of myself, but I knew it was necessary. I was playing chess, not checkers. Meanwhile, I continued to gather evidence. The private investigator kept tabs on Daniel and Amanda's meetings, documenting dates, times, and locations. I saved text messages where Daniel lied about his whereabouts, matching them to proof of where he actually was. I built a case so solid it would be impossible to deny, but the hardest part was deciding what to do about Thomas. He and I had never been particularly close, our friendship mainly existing through our spouses. But he was a good man, a dedicated surgeon who saved lives and donated time to medical missions in developing countries. He didn't deserve what Amanda was doing to him. I learned from casual conversations with Amanda that Thomas was often on call overnight at the hospital. Those were the nights she most frequently met Daniel. She had created the perfect cover for her infidelity, using her husband's dedication to helping others as an opportunity to betray him. The irony was bitter. While Thomas was saving lives, his wife was destroying their marriage. While I was building my business to create a better future for my family, my husband was dismantling everything we had built. I also discovered that Amanda had access to Thomas's schedule weeks in advance, allowing her to plan her rendezvous with Daniel around her husband's hospital shifts. The calculated nature of their affair made it even more despicable. With each piece of information I uncovered, my resolve strengthened. This wasn't just about exposing the affair anymore. It was about justice. It was about truth. It was about giving Thomas the same opportunity I had to make informed decisions about his life and future. I considered different ways to approach the situation. I could tell Thomas privately, showing him the evidence I had gathered. But would he believe me without seeing the betrayal with his own eyes? Would he confront Amanda, giving her a chance to deny everything and warn Daniel? I could send anonymous evidence to both of them, but that seemed cowardly. After all the deception, I wanted to look them in the eyes when the truth came out. The answer came when I received an invitation to the annual charity gala hosted by the hospital where Thomas worked. It was a black tie event that Daniel and I attended every year, as did Thomas and Amanda. This year's gala was scheduled for the following Saturday. The timing was perfect. According to the private investigator, Daniel and Amanda had established a pattern of meeting at the Four Seasons after events where all four of us were present. They would create separate excuses to leave early, then rendezvous at their usual spot. They probably thought they were being clever, but their predictability would be their downfall. I confirmed with the investigator that the pattern was holding. "They've made reservations at the hotel bar for Saturday night after the gala," he told me over the phone. "And you're sure Thomas is unaware?" I asked. "Based on my surveillance and the information you've provided, there's no indication he knows about the affair." I thanked him and began planning meticulously for Saturday night. I bought a new dress, a stunning red gown that made me feel powerful. I scheduled appointments for hair, makeup, and a massage, not because I wanted to look good for Daniel, but because I wanted to feel my best when I reclaimed my dignity. In the days leading up to the gala, I rehearsed what I would say and how I would say it. I wanted to be calm and composed, not emotional or vindictive. I wanted to present the facts clearly and unapologetically. I wanted to show Daniel and Amanda that they hadn't broken me, even if they had broken my heart. I also prepared myself emotionally through therapy sessions. My therapist, Dr. Peterson, helped me process my anger and grief in healthy ways. Remember, the confrontation is not about revenge, she advised. It's about truth and closure. It's about standing up for yourself and allowing Thomas to make his own informed choices. I nodded, understanding the distinction. This wasn't about hurting Daniel and Amanda as much as they had hurt me. It was about removing the mask of deception they had been hiding behind. The night before the gala, I barely slept. My mind raced with scenarios, rehearsing every possible reaction and response. By morning, I was exhausted but resolute. Tonight would be the night everything changed. Tonight, the truth would finally come out. The night of the charity gala arrived, and I found myself strangely calm. After weeks of anxiety and uncertainty, having a plan gave me a sense of control I hadn't felt since discovering Daniel's betrayal. I took my time getting ready, applying my makeup with precision, and stepping into my red gown with purpose. When Daniel saw me, his eyes widened appreciatively. "You look stunning," he said, straightening his bow tie. "Thank you," I replied, allowing myself a small, knowing smile. Tonight's an important night. If only he knew how important. We arrived at the hotel ballroom where the gala was being held. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, and elegantly dressed guests mingled around cocktail tables. I spotted Thomas and Amanda near the bar, her in a sleek black dress, him handsome in his tuxedo. The perfect couple, just like Daniel and I had once appeared to be. "Let's go say hello to the Wilsons," I suggested, leading Daniel toward them with my hand firmly on his arm. Amanda's smile faltered slightly when she saw us approaching, but she quickly recovered. "Julia, Daniel, you both look fabulous." We exchanged hugs and air kisses, the ritual of social niceties that now felt like a theatrical performance. I hugged Amanda a beat longer than necessary, wondering how she could look me in the eye after sleeping with my husband. "Beautiful event," I commented to Thomas. "The hospital must be pleased with the turnout." "It's our biggest fundraiser of the year," he replied proudly. "The proceeds will help fund the new pediatric wing." While Thomas talked about the hospital's plans, I observed Daniel and Amanda carefully. The subtle glances, the careful maintenance of physical distance that seemed practiced rather than natural. The way Amanda twisted her wedding ring unconsciously, a gesture I now recognized as guilt. Throughout dinner, I engaged enthusiastically in conversation, asking Thomas about his upcoming schedule, knowing full well why Amanda was so interested in when he'd be at the hospital overnight. I watched Daniel shift uncomfortably in his chair. "I have an early flight tomorrow for a medical conference in Chicago," Thomas mentioned over dessert. "I'll be gone for 3 days." "Oh, that's too bad," I said sympathetically. "So you'll need to leave the gala early." "Unfortunately, yes. Around 10 if I want to get enough sleep before my 6 a.m. flight." Amanda placed her hand on her husband's arm. "I told Thomas I'd stay and represent us both. The hospital expects at least one Wilson to close down the bar." She laughed lightly. "I bet they do," I thought, taking a sip of champagne to hide my expression. As the evening progressed, I made sure to stay close to Thomas, engaging him in conversation whenever possible. I had texted the private investigator earlier, confirming he was in position at the Four Seasons Hotel bar, ready to document the meeting that would presumably take place after Amanda and Daniel made their excuses to leave separately. At 9:45 p.m., right on schedule, Daniel's phone buzzed. He checked it, frowned dramatically, and turned to me. "I'm so sorry, but there's an emergency with the Henderson account. I need to go into the office to handle it." The familiar lie rolled off his tongue so easily, it was almost impressive. "On a Saturday night?" I asked, feigning confusion. "The Singapore market just opened. It's their Monday morning," he explained already, standing up. "I shouldn't be too long. You stay and enjoy the rest of the evening. Maybe Thomas can drive you home later." Before I could respond, Thomas interjected, Actually, I was just about to head out myself, early flight tomorrow. I saw a flash of panic cross Amanda's face. This wasn't following their script. Oh, that's too bad, Daniel said, his disappointment poorly concealed. Another time, then. Actually, I said, looking directly at Thomas, I was hoping to talk to you about something important. Would you mind giving me a ride? I promise it won't take long. Thomas looked surprised, but nodded agreeably. Of course, no problem at all. Perfect, I smiled. Daniel, you go handle your emergency. Amanda, you should stay and represent the Wilsons as planned. Thomas and I will catch up briefly before he drops me home. Daniel hesitated, clearly thrown by this change in plans. Amanda's eyes darted between us, a hint of panic visible behind her composed expression. Are you sure? Daniel asked me, a slight edge to his voice. Absolutely, I assured him. Go, take care of your important business. After an awkward goodbye, Daniel left. Amanda, now visibly anxious, excused herself to use the restroom. I knew she was texting Daniel, trying to figure out what to do. I turned to Thomas. Would you mind waiting just 15 minutes before we leave? I promised to bid on a silent auction item, and they're announcing winners soon. No problem, he agreed easily. I can spare 15 minutes. That was all I needed. 15 minutes for Daniel to arrive at the Four Seasons. 15 minutes for Amanda to make her excuse and follow him there. 15 minutes for the trap to be set. As expected, Amanda returned from the restroom with a convenient emergency of her own. I'm so sorry, but a client just called with a crisis for Monday's event. She told us her lie mirroring Daniel's almost exactly. I need to go sort it out. Thomas, you should still get your early night. I'll drive Julia home after our chat, Thomas confirmed, kissing his wife goodbye. Amanda left quickly, her high heels clicking urgently across the marble floor. I waited precisely 10 minutes making small talk with Thomas about hospital fundraising and interior design trends. Finally, I looked at my watch. Shall we go? I don't want to keep you too late. As we walked to his car, I took a deep breath, preparing for what was to come. Thomas, I said, once we were seated in his BMW, I need to show you something, and it's going to be difficult, but I believe you deserve the truth. He looked at me quizzically. What's going on, Julia? I'd like you to drive us to the Four Seasons Hotel. There's something there you need to see. His brow furrowed in confusion, but he started the car. The Four Seasons, why? I promise I'll explain everything when we get there. Please trust me on this. The short drive to the hotel was tense with unspoken questions. I received a text from the private investigator. Both subjects arrived. They're at the bar now. When we reached the hotel, I asked Thomas to valet the car. This won't take long, I assured him. We walked through the elegant lobby to the hotel bar. I spotted them immediately, Daniel and Amanda sitting close in a corner booth, his arm around her shoulders, her hand on his thigh. They were so engrossed in each other they didn't notice us approaching. Thomas stopped abruptly when he saw them, his expression changing from confusion to shock to hurt in rapid succession. What is this? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I placed a steadying hand on his arm. I'm sorry, Thomas. I only found out recently myself. At the sound of his voice, both Daniel and Amanda looked up. The colour drained from their faces simultaneously, their expressions of horror almost comical if the situation weren't so painful. Thomas, Amanda gasped, jumping away from Daniel as if burned. This isn't... We were just... Just what? I asked calmly, finally breaking my silence. Just having a work meeting, just discussing a client emergency, just betraying the people who loved and trusted you. Daniel stood up, straightening his jacket nervously. Julia, this isn't what it looks like. I laughed, the sound hollow even to my own ears. Really, Daniel? Because it looks exactly like you're having an affair with my friend. It looks exactly like you've been lying to me for months. It looks exactly like you've both been making fools of your spouses while sneaking around behind our backs. I opened my purse and removed a small folder, placing it on the table between us. In case you need a reminder of what it looks like, here are some photos, hotel visits, secret phones, text messages, credit card statements. The private investigator was very thorough. Amanda was crying now, mascara streaking down her cheeks. "Thomas, please, we can talk about this." Thomas had been silent, processing the scene before him. When he finally spoke, his voice was eerily calm. "How long?" Neither Daniel nor Amanda answered immediately. "6 months that I can prove," I supplied. "Possibly longer." Thomas turned to Amanda, his professional composure cracking. "6 months while I was working night shifts, while I was saving lives, you were with him." Daniel attempted damage control. "Look, things just happened. We didn't mean to hurt anyone." "Things don't just happen, Daniel," I countered. "Affairs are choices. Lies are choices. Betrayal is a choice. You both made those choices repeatedly, knowing exactly what you were doing." The public nature of the confrontation was clearly making Amanda uncomfortable. People at nearby tables were trying not to stare, but our drama was becoming the evening's entertainment. "Can we please go somewhere private to discuss this?" she pleaded, looking around anxiously. "Why are you embarrassed?" Thomas asked, his hurt turning to anger. "Worried about your reputation. You should have thought of that before sleeping with my friend's husband." Daniel tried a different approach. "Julia, you're making a scene. This isn't like you." "You're right, it's not," I agreed. "But then again, I'm not the same person I was before I discovered my husband was cheating on me with someone I considered a friend, before I realized our entire relationship was built on lies." I turned to Thomas, softening my tone. "I'm sorry you had to find out this way, but I thought you deserved to know the truth just as I did." Thomas nodded, squaring his shoulders. "Thank you for having the courage to show me." He looked at Amanda with such disappointment that she seemed to physically shrink. "Don't come home tonight, or tomorrow, or the next day. I need time to think about whether our marriage is worth saving." Amanda's sob was audible across the bar. "Thomas, please." But Thomas had already turned away from her, facing me. "Julia, would you like me to drive you home?" "Thank you, but I think I'll get a taxi," I replied. "I think we both need some time alone to process." Daniel stepped toward me, reaching for my arm. "Julia, wait. We need to talk about this." I pulled away from his touch, feeling nothing but disgust. "We will talk, Daniel. Through our lawyers." With that, Thomas and I walked out together, leaving Daniel and Amanda standing there exposed and ashamed. As we reached the lobby, Thomas stopped and turned to me. "I had no idea," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "Neither did I replied honestly. "Not until a few weeks ago." He shook his head, still processing. "The look on their faces when they saw us. I'll never forget it. It was everything I needed to see the truth." I nodded in agreement. "For me too." We parted ways outside the hotel, both forever changed by the events of the evening, but both finally free from the web of lies we had been living in. The morning after the confrontation, I woke up in my guest bedroom, having chosen not to sleep in the bed I had shared with Daniel. He hadn't come home, and I was grateful for the solitude as I began the process of dismantling our life together. My first call was to Elaine, my divorce attorney. "It happened," I told her. "The confrontation. I'm ready to file today." "I'll prepare the paperwork immediately," she assured me. "Given the evidence we've collected, we're in a strong position." By noon, the papers were drawn up. By 3, they had been filed with the court. By 6, Daniel had been served at his office, a public humiliation he richly deserved. The speed and decisiveness of my actions left him no room to manipulate the situation or hide assets. That evening, as I boxed up Daniel's personal items, my phone rang constantly. First Daniel, then Amanda, then mutual friends who had already heard rumours about what happened at the Four Seasons. I ignored them all, focused on the task at hand. The only call I answered was from Thomas. "How are you holding up?" he asked, his doctor's compassion evident, even through his own pain. "One moment at a time," I replied honestly. "You, the same. I wanted to thank you again for having the courage to tell me. It would have been easier for you to just confront Daniel privately." "You deserved to know," I said simply. We both did. What surprised me most in the days that followed was the overwhelming support from our social circle. I had feared judgment or people taking sides, but the evidence of the affair was so clear and the betrayal so egregious that most rallied around Thomas and me. Daniel and Amanda had broken an unspoken social code and the consequences were swift. Mutual friends invited me to dinners, checked in regularly, and offered practical help with everything from moving furniture to recommending therapists. Women I had considered mere acquaintances stepped forward with stories of their own experiences with infidelity, creating an unexpected support network. Even Amanda's sister called to apologize for her behavior, saying she had been ashamed of Amanda's choices, but hadn't known how to intervene. 1 week after filing for divorce, I received an unexpected call from Thomas. We had texted occasionally, checking in on each other, but hadn't spoken directly since the night at the hotel. "Julia, I'm selling the house," he said without preamble. "I can't live there anymore. Too many memories." "I understand," I replied, looking around at my own home, now half empty, as I prepared to sell it as well. "I'm doing the same. I was wondering if you could help, actually, with your interior design expertise. I'm looking at downtown apartments and have no idea how to make them feel like home." The request touched me. Of course, I'd be happy to help. That consultation turned into coffee, which turned into regular meetings as we navigated similar paths through grief and healing. There was nothing romantic about our connection, just a profound understanding of each other's pain and a shared determination to rebuild our lives. Meanwhile, the divorce proceedings moved forward. Daniel initially tried to claim part of my design business, arguing that his connections had helped it grow. Elaine demolished that argument with evidence that my client base had developed independently and that my personal talent and reputation were the driving factors of my success. The hardest days were the ones where I had to face the empty house alone. The quiet was deafening, the king-sized bed too large for just me. The dining room table set for one. I threw myself into work, taking on more clients and projects than ever before, using the distraction to push through the grief. Some days the anger threatened to consume me. I would find myself raging at Daniel's betrayal while arranging throw pillows at a client's home or selecting paint samples. Other days the sadness would hit, unexpectedly triggered by a song on the radio or the sight of a couple holding hands in the park. 3 months after filing for divorce, I sold our house for a significant profit. The real estate market in our area was booming, and a bidding war erupted over the property I had so lovingly designed. I found a beautiful apartment in downtown Boston overlooking the harbor. It was smaller, but exclusively mine, decorated exactly as I wanted, without considering anyone else's preferences. Thomas and I continued our friendship, occasionally meeting for dinner or attending events together. We understood each other's boundaries and respected the healing process we were both going through. When Amanda made a desperate attempt to reconcile with him showing up at his new apartment unannounced, he called me afterward for moral support. She said she made a mistake. He told me, his voice tired, that Daniel meant nothing to her, that she wants to try again. "What did you say?" I asked, careful not to influence his decision, that some mistakes break trust beyond repair, that I deserve someone who wouldn't betray me in the first place. I felt proud of him for standing his ground, for valuing himself enough to walk away from a relationship that had been poisoned by deception. My own healing journey took unexpected turns. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I decided to take a solo trip to Portugal, a country I had always wanted to visit, but Daniel had never been interested in. For 2 weeks, I wandered through Lisbon and Porto, taking cooking classes, visiting museums, and sitting in cafes watching the world go by. For the first time since discovering the affair, I felt genuinely at peace. Upon returning to Boston, I launched a support group for people dealing with infidelity. Twice a month, we met in a community center to share stories, offer advice, and provide the understanding that only those who have experienced such betrayal can truly give. Leading these sessions helped me process my own experience while helping others through theirs. I also reconnected with old passions I had set aside during my marriage. I took up painting, again something I had loved in college but abandoned as my design business grew. I joined a hiking group that explored trails throughout New England every weekend. I volunteered at a shelter designing living spaces for women transitioning from homelessness to independent living. 1 year after the confrontation at the Four Seasons, I met Thomas for dinner at a new restaurant overlooking the harbour. We had both changed so much, grown stronger through our shared ordeal. I heard Daniel and Amanda broke up, Thomas mentioned as we sipped wine. Apparently he cheated on her too. I laughed, not surprised in the least. Once a cheater, indeed. You know, a colleague asked me recently if I regretted finding out about the affair, if ignorance might have been bliss. And what did you say? I asked, curious about his perspective. I said that living authentically, even through pain, is always better than living in a beautiful lie, that knowing the truth allowed me to make informed choices about my own life. I raised my glass in agreement. To informed choices. As we talked about our current projects and future plans, I realized how far I had come from the broken woman who had hired a private investigator a year earlier. The pain hadn't disappeared entirely, but it had transformed into something manageable, even valuable. The betrayal had taught me to trust my instincts, to recognize red flags, and to value honesty above comfortable illusions. It had shown me my own strength and resilience. It had connected me with supportive friends and a community of survivors. And perhaps most importantly, it had freed me from a relationship with someone who didn't deserve my love and loyalty. Exposing the affair publicly hadn't been about revenge, though I won't deny the satisfaction I felt seeing their shocked faces when Thomas and I appeared at the hotel bar. It had been about reclaiming my truth, refusing to be complicit in my own deception any longer. It had been about giving Thomas the same opportunity to make informed choices about his life. The hardest lesson, and the one that took the longest to learn, was that forgiveness wasn't about absolving Daniel and Amanda of their actions. It was about releasing myself from the burden of anger and resentment that threatened to define my future. Forgiving them was a gift to myself, not to them. As I look back on that chapter of my life now, I realize that losing what I thought I wanted opened the door to discovering what I truly needed: authentic relationships, self-respect, the courage to face difficult truths, the strength to rebuild after devastation. If you're facing betrayal or deception in your own life, remember this: trust your gut when it tells you something is wrong. Gather the facts you need to make informed decisions. Surround yourself with people who support your healing, and know that the pain, however overwhelming it feels right now, will not last forever. Have you ever had to face a difficult truth that changed the course of your life? How did you find the strength to move forward? Share your story in the comments below, and remember to like and subscribe for more real-life experiences. Thank you for listening, and remember that sometimes the most painful endings lead to the most beautiful beginnings.